friends, Harvey Michaels here. Welcome back to our wild ride with Danshui President Plunge Spear Bloom, a story that had me on the edge of my seat while writing it. I'm excited to share a taste with you today. If you're new here, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next. All right, let's jump in.
Chapter 9, Part 3, Paul Hu's Jaw. Before Saturday night's surgery, Paul felt chilled from the ice packs on his jaw and ribs. The CT scan offered a welcome reprieve from the sting of cold, but lying still only heightened his awareness of the injuries scattered across his body. Some he didn't even know he had on his feet, legs, arms, and back. Neither aching hand is functional. The right was stitched and inflamed at the base, and the left-hand knuckles are swollen and sore from abrasions suffered holding the big doormat steady while climbing down on the rocky seawall when typhoon waves pounded and dragged him. Most of the hospital resources spent on Paul were not caring for his medical needs, but keeping the demanding press away from hospital staff. Inside and outside the lobby of the Veterans General Hospital teemed with reporters and camera crews until hospital representatives urgently lobbied police for major press restriction help. The hospital is being overrun with press. We have hundreds of other patients and outpatients too. Please, you have to do something. Police acted swiftly, removing all reporters from the hospital lobby and clearing the news vans outside. They reminded news companies that hospitals were private property. Effective immediately, only one network at a time could cover hospital-related stories, and only for a half hour. Small film crews were permitted to report from outside the front door, but uninvited coverage would result in charges of public nuisance and heavy fines. Police felt they had no choice with the amount of news vans and cameras crowding around. This created another news story. Police using draconian methods, strong-arm tactics, instead of reasoning with the press. They put Paul to sleep so his jaw could be reset and wired together, rubber-banded really. They wrapped his back teeth with steel braces that had small, non-pointy hooks so that elastic bands could hold his teeth together top to bottom and immobilize his jaw for a few weeks. The clamoring public, eager for updates, was informed the moment their hero was anesthetized, and again when the procedure was complete. Doctors held a press conference outside the hospital's front door to provide updates on Paul's condition. They explained that his jawbone wasn't splintered, nor was the break severe enough to puncture the skin. During surgery, they discovered that his jaw had been slightly dislocated, but had reset itself at the time of the injury. The doctors displayed x-rays of his ribs and jaw and described the blended meat and vegetable meal Taiwan's hero had eaten through a straw. Privately, the orthopedic and oral surgeons suspected a male attacker. However, they struggled to explain the injuries revealed by the CT scan. Impact marks and fractures on both his ribs and jaw. The doctors speculated that the damage was caused by either a small-handed man or, more likely, a blunt object roughly the size and shape of a fist. Coco's fist. Sunday morning, Paul awakens surrounded by soft pillows. He looks around and is glad to see it is only his wife in the room. He feels fine until he moves. Then, no matter how he moves, it hurts. His mouth is stitched, his jaw is wired, he has broken ribs and badly bruised legs and more, all throbbing and aching. He lets out a moan as he tries to sit up. Shush, shush, don't move. Let me raise the bed, Lao Gong. Oh, say dozo, he mumbles, his voice nasal and strained, the words muffled by his wired jaw. She manages to decipher his pain-filled question. 我睡多久? How long did I sleep? Paul looks around the room. Every surface in his hospital room is covered with flowers and cards. His wife is especially curious about an ambulance driver's name card serving as a get well card propped over a single rosebud in a thin vase. The inscription reads, "From your friend Lin Suhao, not Jeremy Lin. Get well soon, Paul." How long? You slept over 7 hours, Paul, more than you usually sleep at home. She laughs, a musical, enchanting to Paul laugh of relief, happiness, and love. Why don't you just listen and I'll tell you what I know about everything. Paul forces out 2 syllables of nasal sound that stop at the back of his teeth. His wife interprets them as okay. At the same time, quick streams of tears spill from the corners of his eyes. Hope informs Paul about the typhoon's status, Wang Sanbao's status, and begins reporting about Paul's jaw and ribs. Paul interrupts her. His mouth is downturned in sadness. It's the first time he tried to open his mouth, and the first clear word he's spoken, a question. D? She gently takes her husband's hands in her own. He is alive. He came out of surgery, and they put him into a medically induced coma. That's all I know so far. Paul sinks into his pillows and closes his eyes. More tears escape. He opens his eyes and looks at his wife. Let's pray. He closes his eyes again and starts making a hum, moan sound to pray out loud until she gently touches his lips with her fingers. She realizes then her husband changed in many subtle ways, visible and invisible. His first reaction to pray was not normal. Most days, no matter what, they could put prayers off until prayer time. Paul stops trying to get out the painful words, and she prays quietly out loud for Dee and in thanks for Sanbao's rescue and her husband's role. She never stops looking at her husband's discolored, swollen face, and her own tears plop in succession onto her knees. He breaks the silence after some time of prayer. Shui is the closest he can get to saying shui, water. His wife brings him a glass and helps him drink through a straw. He sips carefully, not for thirst, but to clear the lump in his throat and the unpleasant taste in his mouth. The IV drip is still keeping him hydrated and medicated. She sets her hand as gently as possible directly on top of the ugliest bruising on his jaw. Hope smiles at him and prays over that jaw. Then she gives his shoulders a firm squeeze, just as she does at home when she playfully purrs about how strong he is. But today her touch is reassuring. She tells him they'll get through this, praises his bravery, and reminds him what a good father he is, both by example and through the quality time he spends with their family. Then she gently touches his ribs, the same as with his face, the lightest touch, and prays for his precious, heart-protecting ribs. A nurse appears at the doorway. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hu. The media people say they are waiting to come into your room. They say the police department said they can come in for a visit. Paul winces out. No, that's not happening. The words are fairly clear, and he speaks with more volume than intended, surprising himself and his wife too. A tall, heavy-set, uniformed man with oiled, shortish hair coiffed high appears on the other side of the doorway. He smiles at the nurse first and then looks at the Whos. Officer Who means to say, "Please give him a minute. Would you be so kind as to tell them I'll be along shortly?" "Thank you kindly, Nurse Zhang." He glances at her name badge as he speaks. She hurries away on the errand, and the colonel steps all the way in the door. "You're looking very fine, Officer Who, I must say." He holds his hands outward and seems to have difficulty containing an enormous amount of energy. "We spoke on the phone yesterday. My name is Colonel Sun. Paul, you and I will be friends now forever. I pledge my loyalty and honesty to you here now in the presence of your wife. May I come in?" Paul chuckles, snorts really, through his nose. Colonel Sun and Paul's wife join in chortling after Paul's contagious laugh sound. "I believe he sees the humor that I am already inside the door, eh?" Colonel Sun laughs the longest, and his shoulders drop in relief when Paul snorts that laugh. "Oh, wait, I forgot something." Colonel Sun moves quickly out around the corner and returns with a wheelchair. Memory foam padding forms a wide wedge along the backrest, while a notebook computer rests on the seat. "The padding," he squeezes it as he speaks, "is so your ribs don't have it so bad." He pushes the wheelchair to the table so it faces the door in Paul's private room. "Paul, you will meet with the highest police brass tomorrow. Trust me, it can't wait." He pauses for this to sink in. "You need to go over your oral report, Paul. You'll give it to them before submitting a single-page typed report. Both will disappear, I give you my word. No press, no public will ever know what happened in the fish chopper." He stops, eyes wide and jaw set, the weight of his promise hanging heavy in the air. Less than a handful of people who weren't there know what happened, Paul. And there's so much more to it. 20 times more than you already know about the perpetrators. None of it will ever be made public. But I won't tell you what I know until after tomorrow's meeting. Colonel Sun smiles and turns to Paul's wife. Paul is about to leap up many rungs of the ladder in the police ranks into the world of police intelligence. I couldn't be happier to say it. His smile disappears. It's a lonely life, the life of secrets, but it's how important things get done. From what I've seen, Paul was made for this kind of service. Colonel Sun waves his hands, jovial once again. "Sorry to ramble. You've just had your jaw wired shut. May I suggest letting me handle most of the talking at the press meeting we'll have shortly? I'll introduce your wife in glowing terms and downplay your role. Frankly, there's too much Paul hero worship going on right now. We need to focus on the job." He chuckles, his whole abdomen shaking with robust laughter. "It hurts to talk. Taiwan Jiao. That's all you need to say to the camera. Let them see you move from the bed to the wheelchair, the laptop on the table, ready to go. But no other comments, of course." He turns to Paul's wife. "You can say how proud you are of him, how confident you were in his abilities, and touch his neck, his shoulder, somewhere muscular, a little personal touch for the cameras, okay?" The colonel pauses, glancing upward as if recalling something. "Oh, and when I ask about your children, share how they didn't know anything until Paul was airlifted to the hospital. That's when you told them about the ordeal." He turns back to Paul. "I'll leave with the media, playing the nice guy ushering them out. And I promise, there won't be this much spin doctoring in the future. But for now, we're dealing with a mess. Dirty cops. A blackmail list as long as my arm. We need to stay sharp." Colonel Sun scowls, his gaze dropping to the floor. The quiet words are decidedly nasal, but Paul gets them out, speaking slowly and carefully. Maybe you can offer better terms if they voluntarily come forward within the next few days, say 5 days. Half sentences, maybe suspended sentences, no airing of their dirty laundry. Maybe they keep their retirement. Imply it'll be much harder for them if police have to come after police. We'll throw the book at you if we have to come for you. I like it. Shun squints in thought, nodding at Paul's idea and his determined look, even with the wired jaw pulling his words taut. Very tactical. Paul keeps going, mumbling nasally through the pain as he adjusts to the sound of his wired jaw. I'd take it public, go through the press. Given all the other areas of secrecies we've got to maintain, but that's just me. What do I know? Paul exhales heavily and sinks back in the pillows, his energy spent. Your ideas carry more weight than you realize, Paul. Tomorrow it'll be clear to you. Colonel Sun pats Paul's ankle lightly, his tone reassuring but firm. Colonel Sun steps closer to Paul and leans over, his voice low and deliberate. Tomorrow, after you've finished making the oral report, explaining exactly what happened yesterday behind the highest brass doors you can possibly be behind, I want you to make a show of handing me the paper copy of the report. I'll shred it right in front of everyone. No copies, no loose ends. He gestures toward the laptop in the corner table. Use that notebook computer to type it out. Save the report to the memory stick I left in the USB port and erase it from the laptop completely. Bring the stick to the meeting. I'll print 1 copy for submission. We'll shred that on the spot and destroy the memory stick right in front of them all for everyone to see. Good dramatic symbolism for a fresh, clean beginning. Shun straightens, his tone shifting to matter of fact. Now, for tomorrow's itinerary, after breakfast, an officer will escort you via the hospital service elevator to secure basement parking. From there, they'll drive you to the Central PD. Report directly to Colonel Han at the front entrance at 0900 hours. He'll bring you to the meeting. I won't bother you until then. He pauses, his expression sharpening into something more calculating. His gaze flicks to the doorway before turning back to Paul. All right, time for the next scene. Sit on the side of the bed until you hear me say, "Oh, wait until we move Officer Hu out of bed." That's your cue. The camera will be in position. Colonel Sun flashes a warm, disarming smile, his considerable charm on full display. A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Hu. With that, he steps out to bring in the press. Sanbao visits Willie. It felt like a long time of vivid dreaming. First, a spear-blooming nightmare Willie thrashed to wake from, fighting to free his wrist from zip ties. After that, he returned to sleep and dreamed again. This time was a beautiful alternative version of the last horrible dream. The same spear attack, only this time snail-paced. God delivered Willie and showed him how safe he was in super slow motion. Razor-tipped, mirroring spears filling all space, each one glinting and each one deadly. Spears mirrored Willie, spears mirrored spears. They flew impossibly slow and beautifully in the second dream. Waking, he can't believe the clock only went from 10:30 to 11 o'clock. Willie knows and will never forget how he was delivered. He wants to tell anyone who will listen that we are all being delivered all the time, and God is in control of each spear. The night before, as Willie blinked awake from surgery, the sterile hospital room pulled him back in time. He remembered another place of recovery, a cramped, no-frills neighborhood medical clinic where he'd woken on a narrow cot as a junior high kid. His body had ached all over, a cruel reward for stepping in to defend young Wanda. The memory came alive with startling clarity. The dim fluorescent light, the faint smell of antiseptic, the low murmur of voices just beyond the thin curtain. Wanda had been across from him then, perched on a plastic chair, her own bruises hidden beneath a borrowed sweater, her face and head covered in bandages. She'd been much on his mind during that week of recovery. Not romantically. Life hadn't left room for such fantasies. Their tragedies felt insurmountable, their burdens too isolating. Escape would come, but not through a magic union of their lives. It would have to be something Willie forged with his own hands and mind. Back on his hospital bed, Willie sighs. He misses Wanda, and he misses Pieface, feels it like a thing in his gut, like the hole in his rib. Willie hears an unfamiliar voice outside his room. A man is asking the nurse to please give him privacy with her patient, and she is enthusiastically promising to do so. Without introduction and without knocking, Wang Sanbao walks in. He grins at Willie, who is shocked. "I thought you were near death, Sanbao. Excuse my bluntness, I'm on drugs." "That's all right. I know what you mean. Somehow I'm fine with a much lower dose of blood pressure meds than I was taking before. Doctors haven't explained it very well yet." Sanbao grins again, and his eyes go wide in amusement. "It's nice finally meeting you, Willie. I feel like we've been friends a long time." Willie moves to get up, but stops right away, grimacing at the pain in his skewered gluteus maximus. "Don't get up, brother. We never need to overdo politeness, not you and me, not ever, okay?" They nod at each other. From now on, we are good friends, and close ones, not distant friends anymore. Sanbao smiles intently and waits for Willie to agree. "So, how's your rib? It must hurt." "Thanks for not asking about my backside." Willie groans and lets out a drugged chuckle. Sanbao pulls up a chair at the side of Willie's bed. First, he shares about the time upstairs in the fish chopper when Dee was moved and praying for Willie, doing it all for Pieface, and asking the Lord to consider it unto me too. Dee was willing to share in your suffering, in Willie's suffering. He said that. Sanbao recounted how they prayed together for their dear brother at about the time Willie was rained on by rocketing spears. "Mine was all a most terrible experience, Willie, and yet it was a staggeringly miraculous time, and I am glad I was there." "I don't know what to say, Sanbao." Willie's words are slow, his voice thick with the haze of medication. "Dee and I were driving straight into the super typhoon when we heard the first reports. Colonel Sun said you'd been abducted. It didn't seem real. 20 years. You, me, Dee, Colonel Sun, all of us connected but never together, like pieces of some invisible puzzle. And then suddenly..." He stops, his hand drifting as though trying to grasp a thought. "Suddenly it's like one typhoon crashed into another and another. Wherever you were, wherever I was, it all just collided." Willie's voice trails off, and for a moment it seems like he might fade completely into the haze of medication. But Sanbao, brimming with energy, doesn't let this lull take hold. Leaning forward, he launches into his account, his expressions animated as he recounts everything from leaving the hotel in the super typhoon's peak to his harrowing rescue. "What a weekend, Willie! Flying over the sea, under the sea, on the sea, chained, drugged, almost shot more than once." He pauses, throwing on a mock-alarmed look. I sound like I enjoyed it. That's not what I mean. They laugh together, the sound breaking the weight of the moment. But the levity fades when Willie leans back against his pillows, his brows drawing together like a mountain ridge of tight wrinkles. I'm not ready to talk about that night with Kingfish. His voice is soft but firm. But there are things I haven't told anyone about. All this. Things I think I want you to know. It's Sanbao's turn to listen as Willie begins, first smiling faintly while recounting his fresh, slow-motion spear dream. But his expression shifts, his mouth pulling downward as he confides about the long tunnel of darkness he's endured, years of acute anxiety, sleepless depression, and the haunting repetition of a nightmare. In it, he feels the tip of the Bowie knife that pierced Pieface's chest, plunging into his own just before waking, again and again, morning after morning. Willie's voice wavers as he admits his doubts, the spiritual correctness of his relentless, law-breaking campaign for justice, or maybe revenge, for his best friend and brother, Pieface. He pauses, his chest rising with a deep breath, his gaze drifting to the IV in his arm. The drugs have dulled the sharp edges of pain, but not the ache in his heart. Sanbao, before Pieface was killed, I wanted to marry, to settle down. I prayed God would bring someone to me, someone like Wanda was for Pieface. Willie doesn't try to wipe the tears coursing down his face. In those last hours at Pieface's place, I prayed again for family, for another chance, that it wasn't too late. He shares memories of growing up with Wanda, watching her blossom because of Pieface's love. His voice softens as he recalls their wedding and their chosen song, Roberta Flack's "The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face." It was their forever theme song, he says, choking up. After Kingfish was done for, after I talked to Colonel Sun, while I was waiting for the troops to arrive, I heard that song clearly in my head. Willie's voice falters. I never got to say goodbye to Pieface. He was my best friend, the best brother anyone could ever have. His sobs shake his frame, the storm finally breaking after years of suppression. You can grieve now, Willie. Finally. Don't hold it back. Sanbao pats Willie's arm with one hand and gently clasps his hand with the other, staying close until the storm subsides. When Willie calms, Sanbao speaks, his voice warm and steady. Big guy told me about the wedding. I wanted to be there with you all so badly. You're a good friend, Sanbao. Pain medication slurs Willie's words, his eyelids growing heavy. He leans back with a sleepy smile. But we can't talk like this all the time. It's exhausting. Paul who? That night, Paul wakes in a sweat, gasping for air after a series of nightmares. His chest heaves, and his jaw throbs with every shallow breath. Hope is at his side, speaking softly, but she can't make out what he's trying to say. He shakes his head when she offers water, and again when she suggests pain medication. Paul's voice is garbled, barely more than a rasp. His face twists with the effort, and finally she catches it. Wang Sanbao. You want to see him? Now? Hope stares at him, incredulous. Paul, it's the middle of the night. You need to rest. Ignoring her protests, Paul throws off the sheet and swings his legs over the edge of the bed, wincing with every movement. Pain clamps down on him, his ribs grinding with each breath, his jaw straining against the pull of the rubber bands. Paul, stop. The doctor said these first hours are the worst for pain. You need to take it easy. You need your meds. She grabs his robe, trying to reason with him. He doesn't answer, just holds out his arms for the robe. Hope sighs and helps him ease it on, her hands brushing his bruised ribs. He groans but doesn't stop. Fine, she mutters, moving beside him as he shuffles out the door. He leans heavily on her. Every step a fresh wave of pain. Hope matches his slow pace, her arm wrapped tightly around his waist. At Sanbao's door, Paul knocks softly, but doesn't wait for an answer. He nudges it open just enough to peer inside. What could possibly be so urgent, Paul? Hope hisses from behind, her voice sharp with concern. From within, a deep, calm baritone answers, Come in, Paul. Paul glances back at Hope, raising a hand in silent apology. Don't worry, the voice continues. Your wife can join us. Please, Mrs. Hu, come in, Hope. They step inside the dimly lit room. It takes them a moment to notice the second bed across the room where Sanbao's wife sleeps soundly beneath a blanket. Hope hesitates, then speaks, her tone softer now. Paul's in a lot of pain. He just had a bad dream. Sanbao nods, his face calm but shadowed with exhaustion. The man who dominated every news channel for days sits propped up in bed, his presence still magnetic despite the hospital gown. A bad dream, he says, voice thoughtful. Me too, Paul. I don't know how long it'll be before I can forget the fish chopper. Paul lifts his hands toward the old man, but pain shoots through him and pulls back with a groan. He forces out through his wired jaw, his words muffled and labored. Hope leans in, catching the faint syllables. Doibuchi, sorry? She translates softly, her eyes darting between Paul and Sanbao. Paul nods, tears falling onto the crisp hospital sheets. Sanbao shakes his head gently, his expression calm yet firm. Sorry for what, Paul? For Dee? For me? His voice carries an almost fatherly warmth. The timing was right, son. You have nothing to be sorry for. The timing was from God. Remember the verse in Psalm 23? He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. That's what happened. Paul's gaze remains downcast, but Sanbao presses on. I don't know why Dee was hurt, but look at the lives saved. Coco, Awa, they're free now because of it. Sanbao glances over at his wife, who is now awake and sitting up, her face radiant and unwavering. Paul, Sanbao continues, his voice steady but full of conviction. God prunes plants in ways we can't understand. It's painful, but the new growth is always worth it. Let me tell you about my son, Bernie.
And that's a wrap for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What stood out to you? If you're enjoying the journey, please share with a friend. It means the world to me. Want to hold the whole Danshui President Plunge adventure in your hand? It's waiting for you on Amazon. And if you do, please leave a quick review. Until next time, take care. I'll be right here ready for the next chapter. See you then.